there's a lot happening. There's a lot on our plates. And I think it's really easy for people to feel discouraged and get burnt out. And, for that reason, I think it's just all the more important for us, especially us who are pioneering this industry. Like we are still so new at it. I think it's so important for us to come alongside one another and encourage each other and figure out how we can lift one another up and find ways to sustain this industry so that we're not all burnt out and we don't have these like crazy high expectations that we're meant to uphold all the time.
That was Ali Ebright, and this is episode number 119 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I am your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. This is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. So every week, my goal is to bring to you thoughts, stories, interviews, everything related to food blogging so we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Let's get straight to today's episode. Today, I'm talking to Ali Ebright. She's of the site Gimme Some Oven, and I know that you've seen her food photography all over Pinterest and Instagram. It's a very distinguished looking photograph that she creates, and it's beautiful and very inspiring. So let me just say this about today's episode. If you're feeling discouraged about the work that you're doing, or if you're feeling overworked and overwhelmed or tired, or you're scratching your head wondering what the heck you're doing wrong, or maybe you're wondering, why am I doing all of this? What's wrong with me? Why is it that everybody else in the world seems to have everything figured out, but I just can't seem to do that? Well, today's episode is just for you. Because Ali spoke at ChoppedCon in October, and she just had the room in tears. And it was like a mixture of tears of joy and tears of just connecting. I think, she put voice to the thoughts that we all have at these times. Like I was just saying before, like, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Having somebody put voice to that and acknowledge what we're all going through, it just was very moving. We all have times where we feel this way. And Ali mentioned that it doesn't matter what food blogger you talk to, everybody goes through periods where things just feel like a struggle. So I was so touched by Ali's presentation that I asked her to come on the show, and she agreed to talk about, basically her presentation at Chopped. And I'm so glad to have her here. I'm so glad to share this with you because I feel like it's something that we all need to acknowledge at times, that this can get really hard at times, and it can cause you to doubt yourself at your very core. And I hope today's discussion leaves you feeling even just a little bit, and maybe even a lot more inspired. As I sit here recording this episode today, there are these big, huge snowflakes coming from the sky. That's probably the prettiest thing about February so far, because, it's really kind of dark and dreary and cold and windy, and it's, you start to get a little claustrophobic at times. And so that's why I am hoping that this feeling of inspiration will carry you through these dark days as we head into the very, very beginning of spring next month. So let's get straight to today's feature interview with Ali Ebright. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Ali Ebright. She's of the site Gimme Some Oven, and she's back on the show today. Hey Ali, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Thanks so much, Marley.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you back. And I loved talking with you last time. I love talking with you anytime I get a chance to talk with you, to be honest.
Always.
I know. And you spoke at Chopped Conference in October, and I have just found myself, drooling over the things that you said. And it was just so inspiring. I loved it.
Oh, thank you so much. That conference meant a lot to me. Just being able to connect with the people there is just so good. And I feel like you make it such a heart-centered conference. It's just good for everyone's spirits, I feel.
That's my whole hope with, Chopped Conference, is that it would just be a place we could connect beyond, figuring out SEO, although that's really cool too. But it's also just about this, connection on a real basis. And wow, your talk just did that in spades. Honestly, there were tears in the audience when you were speaking.
I had tears preparing it.
Oh yeah.
Important stuff.
I think I know how that goes. Yeah. But before we get into all of that, I really am looking forward to talking with you more about what you spoke about. But I was wondering, just for people who haven't listened to episode 10, which is when you were here before, or if they have listened to it and it's been a while, maybe you could just kind of go into a little bit about, I don't know, recap of why you started your blog and where you're at with it now.
Yeah, so I started my blog, Gimme Some Oven, about, gosh, 7+ years ago now. And I did it, I think like so many people, just totally as a hobby to begin, as a place to kind of categorize my recipes and have an easy way to share them with friends. And I just totally blogged in my own little bubble for a few years and had fun teaching myself how to cook and how to take photographs and such. And then, yeah, I finally opened my eyes to the fact that there was an entire industry that had sprung up around it and started kind of pushing myself to post more consistently and such. And then I hit a spot where I was ready to leave my job and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So I decided to just try blogging full time for the summer. And whatever it is now, 4 or 5 years later, I'm still at it full time and just have completely fallen in love with it. And yeah, I have fallen in love with the community of readers around it. And I just feel so lucky to wake up and be able to do what I do each day now.
I was going to say, do you ever find yourself going, is it really what I'm doing? This is so cool.
Yeah, it's still nuts. It still just completely boggles my mind that, recipes that I cook up in my little kitchen here in Kansas City can be cooked around the world. And that's the magic of the internet, and it never gets old.
I still remember what you said the last time you were on the show. I mean, it just moved me in a big way. And that was like, you're talking about sometimes we get down on ourselves. Like maybe we say, oh, I only have 1,000 people who come to my site every month. And, and when you're comparing yourself to people who have 1 million page views a month, that 1,000 just feels so insignificant. But your point was 1,000, if you were talking to a room full of 1,000 people, you would be freaked out, nervous, excited, all of it.
Totally. That would be epic. And that is epic.
Yes.
Like the way, the way the internet works, the way that people get connected, yeah. And I think that's so common for us as bloggers. We just, we have this weird job where everything that we do, there's a metric for. I mean, like every post on social media, you can see how many people have seen it or liked it. Yes. Like every blog post we publish, there are so many numbers on Google Analytics telling us how popular it is. Like it's a weird job how much I think we look at numbers,
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's really easy, I think, for those to become, just numbers that we analyze and judge ourselves by. But any way that we can ever turn those numbers back into living, breathing people, it's so important. But I fall into that all the time. So, yeah, I always like to imagine all those people being clumped in one room. And that's totally humbling and awesome. And the power of the internet.
I think another thing that's really important on that same line of thinking too is to remind ourselves that no matter what, like I may be looking at somebody who's got more followers than me on Instagram and thinking, God, I wish I could just get to that point. And they are looking at somebody that's beyond them and thinking, I wish I could be to that point. And then that, it just keeps going and going. I know. It's never enough.
Yeah. There's always more.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get to your presentation at Chopped Conference now, because I wanted to, it had such a huge impact on me. And I know everybody who was in the room that heard it as well. And I want you to know, I never have even watched the show Friday Night Lights.
I wondered how many people had. Yeah, for those who are listening, I based pretty much the entire presentation around Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights. And yeah, but I looked around because beforehand I practiced the presentation for my then boyfriend, now fiance, and he's never seen Friday Night Lights, and he's like, "Are you sure people are going to connect with this?" And I was like, "I feel like most people have seen some Friday Night Lights," but yeah. it was fun to see all the eyes in the room light up.
Yeah, most people did. They really did get into it, and I hadn't seen the show, but I definitely looked it up when I got back. But even without having watched the show ever, I definitely felt exactly what your point was and what the point of the show was, and it all came together so perfectly. I just loved it. Good. So I feel like you've been really vocal on with these sorts of issues that food bloggers face on a daily basis, things like feeling anxious and overwhelmed and all of this stuff. And I know that you talked about it before, so that means that you might have even heard even more people in the meantime talk about it. I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about what you've seen as this, it's what we go through personally, or why is this thing? It's like a sort of a collective experience that we all go through. What do you think is behind that?
Yeah, I think there's so much to it. I think it's an unusual job.
Yeah.
It's an unusual job. I think how much or how we analyze ourselves, how much we look at other people around us.
Mhm.
One of the things I mentioned in the presentation, like when I think about how often I am confronted, for better and worse, like how much I pass by on a daily basis the work of other people in my industry. It's like so often, especially compared to other industries. Like how many accountants do who are following
Yes.
each other daily on social media, who are analyzing each other's work weekly?
Yeah.
It's a strange thing how much we see one another. And again, kind of like those metrics we talked about, how easy it is to compare ourselves to one another.
Right.
And I think this industry is just, changing so quickly, and it's requiring bloggers to wear so many different hats, or to potentially hire other people now to help with those hats. And yeah, I just think there's a ton of pressure, and that's okay. It's moving us, and it's moving our industry forward, I think, in some really cool ways. But lest we ever forget, there's a lot happening. There's a lot on our plates, and I think it's really easy for people to feel discouraged and get burnt out. And, for that reason, I think it's just all the more important for us, especially us who are pioneering this industry. Like we are
Yeah.
still so new at it. I think it's so important for us to come alongside one another and encourage each other and figure out how we can lift one another up, and, find ways to sustain this industry so that we're not all burnt out and we don't have these like crazy high expectations that we're meant to uphold all the time.
Oh, that
So
is.
yeah, I'm always interested in those conversations and how people are, finding kind of the elusive, I don't even know if balance is the right word, but finding some sort of equilibrium in there that feels good to them, and, just finding ways to stay encouraged and inspired, and, just all around healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I actually like to remind myself this is probably not just true about blogging. I think it probably correlates really well with people who own their own businesses, because I have done work like in a consultant way for a lot of other companies, but then I find working for myself is a real struggle sometimes. And so, I mean, food blogging to me is like the ultimate in working for yourselves, because not, you're creating everything from scratch all the time. And it really starts
Literally.
to, literally, yeah. It can be overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things I mentioned in the presentation is, I guess I've just become so aware of, I used to have a more traditional job in an office with a boss and all of that. And, I had a supervisor weighing in, pretty regularly, just
Hmm.
kind of about how I'm doing. And, and I had
Oh,
opinions
yes.
about what kind of a boss he was, whether or not he was supportive or whatever it may be. And, I just realized, in being self-employed, I think as most food bloggers are, or at least, they're in charge of their blogs. Um, we don't like, I don't get that boss's input.
Yes. That's so
I'm the boss,
true.
for better and worse. And there's tons of for better. But I
Yeah.
think the for worse is just, like I can be my own worst critic. And yeah, I remember we talked about at ChoppedCon, just kind of inviting people to step back for a second and look at themselves, like as a boss. Like, how would you analyze yourself as a boss? Are you someone, who looks at yourself with generous eyes? Are you someone who gives yourself like a reasonable amount of work to get done in the day? Are you someone that, you're really inspired to work for? And honestly, if I ask myself that a lot of times, oh my gosh, I can be a total slave driver and just
Yes.
not that satisfied with my work all the time. And so I think it's learning to care for ourselves and look at ourselves through eyes that are loving and encouraging, and yeah, giving ourselves a good old break every now and then,
I love
or
that.
all the
And
time.
another thing I would add to that list is the resources. Like, so as a boss, do I give myself the resources I need to get the work done the way I need to get it done? And to me, those resources would be, what if there's a better tripod I could get rather than like being so frustrated with the tripod I use every day that is, not working exactly right? Or what if there's a
Yeah.
class I can take in styling that would help me, feel more confident in the work that I don't know. I just feel like sometimes we expect a lot of ourselves without the right resources.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I love that. And actually, my tripod is in need of an upgrade. So
Mine too.
maybe I'll tell my boss to get on that.
Yeah. So let's talk about Coach Taylor because you mentioned that he has this talk that he gives, and the very first thing that he says is clear eyes, and I just love that.
Yeah. Yeah. He has
Oh,
this phrase. Oh my gosh. And my heart just, beats quickly
yes.
every time it comes up. There's always good music behind it too.
We
But
need to
yeah,
do
Coach
that. How do we make
Taylor.
that happen?
Yeah, Coach Taylor says clear eyes, full hearts can't lose. And so in the presentation, we kind of broke it down into those three things. And yeah, I think, as bloggers, I talked about how we need clear eyes to see ourselves. Again, kind of that thing about looking at yourself as a generous, an encouraging and inspiring supervisor. And
Yes.
yeah, like being able to see ourselves for our strengths and the things that we want to work on and kind of the full picture. And, really loving ourselves fully. Like I think
Right.
that's our life's work, learning to love ourselves truly, but especially even as bloggers, I think, being like, really proud of the work that we've done so far and the things that we've learned already.
Yeah. Don't you think
And
that's a part of clear eyes? Like, um,
yeah,
being able to look at things clearly, not like in comparison to other people, even just what are the goals that I have for myself? And that to me feels like clear eyes.
totally. I mean, and half the time it's me just kind of getting out of my own head and,
Yes.
in those moments, just going back and reading through some readers' comments or whatever it may be and being like, oh yeah, people like my work. Like they're not comparing me to so and so, or they're not, saying
Right.
that I need to crank out this many more recipes a month or whatever. Like they're totally fine. I'm the one here who's setting some unrealistically high standards.
Ah, gosh, it's like, how do we turn that? I mean, well, first of all, we could just say this. What are the reasons that we have that voice going on in our head? Is that a signal or a symptom of having an empty heart rather than a full heart?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a symptom of so many things, just
Yeah,
pressure and
right.
insecurity and yeah, all those things that again are totally normal. And I think bloggers beat themselves up sometimes for feeling, but yeah, they come with the package. And so when that
Yeah.
voice starts speaking loudly in my mind, which it does often, like I just feel like every year that I do this, I'm learning more and more. Just it seems like the most elementary basic thing, but just to be like, hey, you're doing a good job. And just to receive that is,
Yeah.
a win for the day.
I got life coaching last year and it was all about this kind of stuff. And what I learned from that is just like what you're talking about. But what I learned is like, if I can be more in touch with like my inner self or who I, this like, I don't know how to explain it really, but just like the inner being of me and know that to me, that's like the core of authenticity. And
Yeah.
then it's like, all the other things kind of melt away. It's not like, or do my photos look as good as Allie's, or do they look as good as this person's? Or it's really about,
Hmm.
do my photos meet the goals that I have for myself? And that feels so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, just like any job, like the joy of it is that oh my gosh, this sounds so cheesy, but like I feel like at this point in life, I'm like, the joy of life is that we get to keep learning. Like we don't
Yes.
figure it out, and that's the good part of life. There's always more to explore. There's always more, gosh, even as a blogger, I just feel like I could study photography forever, and
I
I will the rest of
know.
my life, or writing, or learning how to cook well. Like there's always room to grow, and so that's a totally natural part of it. Like we're always going to be learning. So yeah, if we ever have like an epic recipe bomb or whatever, that's oh my gosh, that's so part of the process. But it's amazing how on the days when that happens, like literally the other night I was just making pasta for my fiance and I and it was so so and like he's sitting next to me just like gobbling it up and he was so happy with it and I was like, you don't
Eh.
understand. It's like that I'm a food blogger and like I feel like I should be better at making like basic pasta by now. And he's like, you're fine. I'm eating it. It's great. And I was like, where did this come from? Where do these crazy standards come from? Like, we're all learning. And frankly, I think all of us know that our readers love the mistakes. They love the honesty when you're like, yep. So I tried to make like regular mac and cheese and somehow goofed it up. And they're like, yes, I
Yes.
relate. You're
Everybody
relatable.
goes through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Totally.
that. And I think sometimes it's so easy to want, like, I kind of fall prey to this perfectionism syndrome sometimes where it's like I only want to show things that are perfect. And I think you're so right that it's good to be real and talk about those kinds of problems that happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I don't know, it makes us more relatable maybe.
Oh yeah, perfectionism is not relatable
That's
at all.
right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
perfect is not relatable. People striving to be perfect. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, and I think I get this, like it's a little bit kind of like what you're talking about. I really have this desire to know it all. And I think that's one of the reasons that food blogging is so intriguing is because, it's just like there's a constant learning process. And the more that you can embrace that and not go, okay, just go, okay, I don't have to know everything all at once, all the day. I can just know what I know and continue learning it. Just, I don't know, it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, well, and I love that. And I think, that's one of the reasons that people love bloggers too. Like, we're not Bon Appetit, with like
Right.
professional chefs,
Yes.
who have like,
Right.
who, I don't know, there's a different level of expectation there for, I don't know,
You're
just
right.
perfection all the time, like consistently. Like, I think most people I know who are bloggers are people who've taught themselves to cook. And it's kind of
Yes.
like, yeah, there might be little mistakes here and there because I'm learning alongside you. But, as long as we keep it open together and correct each other's mistakes, yeah, we'll be fine in this together.
Yeah. Okay, so I have got a question for you.
Yeah.
Where do you find, we're talking about balance, and I love this topic of being the supportive boss in your mind and all of these wonderful things. How do you find the balance between having that kind self-talk and also being very productive? Because don't you think sometimes it's like, it's easy to think that when we're driven and working, like driving ourselves, that's how we get things done.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, I think I will always err on the side of being overly driven and
Yeah.
overly critical. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
just my personality or I'm also a big believer in the Enneagram. I don't know if you've studied this. It's like a
Kara
system
talks
of
about it.
personalities. Oh,
Yes.
nice, nice. Yeah, anyway, my type on the Enneagram is a three, which is called the achiever. And so it's kind of like for better and worse, threes like to get stuff done. So
Yes.
my friends who are like, how do you work from home and get things done? I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Like the challenge for me, I think, will always be setting aside work and getting fun things done. So anyway, random tangent to say, like, I'm always pretty driven to do these things. But yeah, I think, but I also know like my job before food blogging was as a musician. And I just think as a creative, like it's so obvious in work that if you are super stressed and if the messages going through your mind are negative or self critical, like your creative work just won't be as good. And it's just so much harder to get into that space where yeah, you feel free to dream and experiment and make mistakes. And like, that's all, like, we all know that. That's a huge part of the creative process. But I
Yes.
think for me, a lot of times perfectionism comes in because I have too many things on my plate. And so,
Oh,
like, if I get really bummed if a recipe fails or a photo shoot doesn't go well, sometimes it's because I have so much happening that week that I'm like, this was my one shot. I didn't
yes,
have
the
time for
light
this
is
one.
perfect. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think some of it is, I don't know, for me, it's been, I just feel like it's constantly, like for my creative process, the challenge is just to create space, to have margin, to be able to, experiment and try different things and, get inspired, like look around at other people's work. And, when I'm able to do that, I feel like my headspace is just totally different. I'm able to come up with better work. I enjoy it so much more. But yeah, when I get, the opposite for sure, when there's too much on my plate or I'm feeling stressed or I get stuck in a comparison rut with other people, yeah, my creative work suffers and the whole thing is rough. But
What do you do when you find yourself in the middle of one of those? Do you have tips for pulling out?
Yeah. I can't remember if I feel like maybe I talked about this the last time we were together a little bit. I think one of my biggest, like, I've always struggled with comparison. It's just this like icky
Yeah.
little thing in my heart that drives me crazy because I don't want to do it. I don't want to
Yeah.
compare myself to others, but sometimes it happens.
Yes.
And I feel like one of the best things I learned was actually at a conference I went to a few years ago with Glennon.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Is it
Doyle.
Melton Doyle?
Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
always get her last name mixed up. And Shauna Nequist, and they were talking about comparison, and they said that like for them, like the first instinct, like their first thing that they do, they've tried to train themselves. Whenever you get stuck, like comparing yourself to someone else and not feeling like you measure up, it's to do something like positive in their direction. Either like send them a
Oh,
note of encouragement or a text or a comment on their blog, or share their work on your channels or something. Be
yes.
like, oh my goodness, I just read this thing or I just saw this post and it was extraordinary. And I've put that into practice myself the past few years. And it's ridiculous how much it works, how much
Really?
it helps. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a win win all around. It's like all of a sudden that ickiness in my heart is just kind of like, oh, yeah, like I really do love this person's work. I don't know why I feel like, you know, yeah, I don't know why I got in that zone, but
So it's almost like clear eyes, full heart. And when the full heart, sometimes it's like counterintuitive that the thing that you would do is, you may have a less than full heart when you're feeling bad about somebody else's great work. And the way to get over that is to, take a deep breath and praise them. That's kind of cool.
yeah, yeah, I totally love it. And yeah, and I think another thing, like I just am always trying to kind of get back into yeah, anytime I find myself in that funk, I always go back to gratitude and just trying to take a step back. And sometimes
Yeah.
literally that's like a step back from my camera or, the pot of pasta on the stove or something and kind of be like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
what is this that I'm feeling right now? Like I have this gorgeous camera in front of me with a delicious plate of food and I'm fed and I get to be creative for my job. Like I go through the whole list and I
Yeah.
kind of make myself stop and say, this is, like stop your work for a few minutes and just kind of reorient yourself because this is not helpful and this is not you. Like this is not your truest heart.
Right. So are you saying you have days where you're kind of like I'm down with food blogging right now?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's so nice to know that misery loves company, I guess. We all have those days, but I just feel like it might help people to hear that,
Oh,
we all
yeah.
have those times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think like one of the best other things that I always turn to are my group of friends. And,
Mm,
so often I feel like some of the things that bloggers stress out about are totally legit, but are also totally kind of bloggish.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this is a weird
Sluggish.
thing to say, but like if I'm getting like too concerned about, oh my gosh, that video that I worked really hard on is not getting shared today. Like I'll make myself text that to one of my friends who's, a teacher or something, and she'll kind of be like, it's okay. It's just Facebook shares. Like you're all right. and,
Yes.
and I mean, there's validity to those things, of course. Like there's validity to Facebook shares, but sometimes it just is so refreshing to talk to my friends who are not bloggers and who are not, looking at the same metrics or looking at whatever. And most of the time they see me and they see my work and they're like, you're fine. You're doing a good job.
Yes. Do you ever take like a blogging vacation then? Do you like go for a weekend without being a blogger?
Yeah, yeah. Man, I've tried really hard the past probably like year and a half. I used to be so bad at this. I mean, I worked ridiculous
All
hours
the
for a few
time.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really tried hard to back off from nights and weekends for sure. And then, yeah, trying to move back to a place where vacations are 100% vacations, which I know the rest of the world, they're kind of like, just take a vacation. But as a blogger, you're just so aware
It's
that
hard.
24/7, yeah, your website's still going and comments are still coming in and, all of the above that we think about. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of time off. And I think like also this is whatever, but like dating definitely helped me with that too because it was like
Yes.
when I started dating Barkley and he'd come over for the evening, I guess I didn't, it made me super aware of how often I kind of like, quote, just check my phone or just check my email. And, that would
Yes.
turn into like a 30-minute email sesh that I didn't intend. So he's been a good influence.
Yeah. Sean is great for me because I probably have, workaholic tendencies as well. And, he's like, what's 6 o'clock? We're done or, whatever. I mean, of course,
Yeah,
every now and then you've got big projects that you're working on, but I love having
sure.
somebody in my life that, gives you that balance.
Oh yeah, Barkley's like really good at unplugging. He's super super good at it actually. He's the sort of guy who could totally go off social media and be thrilled. And so anyway, I think we balance each other out nicely.
I just watched a show or it's like a little video clip about this guy living in a tunnel in I don't know some some very cold climate and he is totally off of the grid and had solar power and I think every now and then I think that sounds kind of tempting.
Right?
Yes.
But I believe in that, man. I don't know. I believe in my friends. We've started picking up that. I don't know if you read that book, Essentialism.
I
Um,
actually I have it's on my playlist. I mean I started listening to it on Audible, but I haven't finished it.
Awesome. I think you'll love it. One of the things that he talks about is doing a quarterly retreat, which he recommends, just unplugging whatever that looks like for a day, like one day every quarter, and just using that day to reflect. And he has some like guided questions that you can answer. And anyway, we've started doing that with our friends. We get together. Sometimes we do it together. Sometimes we do it on our own, and just try and encourage one another to like at least once a quarter, which is a really good amount of
Yes.
time, by the way. I feel like
Right.
every 3 months, life has changed enough that I kind of have different things that I want to focus on or reassess. And anyway, so that can even be in your own house. Just unplug everything. He really encourages you to go someplace else if you can.
Yeah.
But I've been doing that for the past year or so, and it has been so helpful. And it's also reminded me, like, I can totally unplug in my own house. I don't need to go to Mexico or something. Like, I can turn things off, and the world
Yes.
will not stop.
Honestly, I think it's kind
So,
of nice to be in my house and not be a blogger for a day because it's like I remember little projects I wanted to do and
yes.
things I just don't get to and then I come return to my home and it just feels like my home again.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
I used to have like I mean I have a Pinterest board and I used to like have all these designer magazines to do projects around the house. It's like that's all gone by the wayside.
Yeah, that's funny. Me too, because I remember when Pinterest began, like long before food bloggers,
Yes.
took it over. Like I loved to craft, and I still have like tons of those sort of projects, and I do them every now and then. But yeah, for me, that was definitely one of the things that fell by the wayside a
Do
little
you
bit
still
with
have a craft
blogging.
board on Pinterest then?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I have like a little craft closet. I love making things.
So you get them out whenever you're ready to do some crafts.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I know that people talk about Pinterest and use it only for the recipes, but I don't know. I think if I did that, I probably wouldn't get on Pinterest at all.
Yeah, yeah. I think if people love Pinterest, then like, use it the way that you want to use it.
Yes,
But yeah, I think for bloggers, it can definitely turn into work.
that's true.
Which it's and again, it's okay if it's
Right.
100% work and you're just using it to pin, your stuff or other people's stuff. But yeah, I still like using it every now and then for like fashion and home
Yeah.
decor stuff and yeah.
Okay, so we had clear hearts. No, no, I clear eyes, full heart,
Yes.
and can't lose. And I wanted to talk about can't lose for a few minutes too, because, well, it reminds that line reminds me when Addie had a tennis coach who was playing tennis, and the tennis coach said your main goal in the match that you're about to play is to find a way to win. And he wasn't talking about the score. He was talking about you improve in some area. Do you think that's what they mean by can't lose?
I love that. Yeah. Well, and I think, those things add up too. Like if your eyes are clear, if you're seeing yourself and,
Yes.
your blog and those around you, your readers through like, healthy, loving eyes. And if you're taking care of yourself, if your heart is full, if you're taking care of your health as well
Yes.
and like giving yourself time to rest and all of these things, it's kind of like, yeah, if the right things are in place, you can't lose.
Yes.
And don't let Google Analytics or anything else tell you otherwise. Like,
Right.
It's, I guess, what I keep going back to today. It's like, you're doing a good job where you are right now. Exactly today. Like, you're doing a good job. And we as an industry, like, I always think of blogging kind of by comparison to so many other different industries out there right now. And we're still so new.
Right.
And it's like, as long as we can continue to support one another and to support ourselves well, like, I think this thing's going to last. I think we're going to figure it out together. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like people are always kind of doom and gloom about the future of, I don't know, whether
Oh
it's
yeah.
advertising or,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. I have total faith in this industry that we're going to make it. I just want to make sure that, we're not a bunch of workaholics 50 years from now who haven't lived life while we've been instead, like, furiously creating content for our blogs. I just want to make sure that we, set a standard for ourselves as an industry for, what a healthy work-life balance and healthy vision success is.
Yes, it reminds me of an Indigo Girls lyrics. I love the Indigo Girls anyway, but they have a line where they say something like, the thing that I fear is that I might reap the praise of strangers and end up on my own. Like
Oof.
the whole point is, we need to have lives and we need to have fulfilled, full heart lives, not just, what can I
Yeah.
put on the page today?
Yeah, and like a full heart that's your own, like not
Yeah.
modeling it after anyone else's, like being fully, wholly you. Like that's, I love that about the blogosphere, like being able to look around when I see people being truly unique and truly themselves. I don't know, I just feel like it's this like light shining out of,
Yes.
I don't know, just seeing how diverse and wonderful people truly are. Like I love that the blogosphere can be a representative of, all of the different ways to live a life.
Yes. You have a really unique style. Is that something that I mean, did you kind of come into, photography style is what I'm kind of thinking of, and this and your food
Ah,
styling as well. I mean, is that something that you kind of came into with that goal in mind, or did you kind of develop that too?
yeah, I totally stumbled into it by accident. I well, I feel like the first few years, like I knew nothing about photography, like nothing about how to work a camera, much less style food or,
Yeah.
kind of food backgrounds and shots. And so I just kind of did that thing where I think this is normal when you're learning. I just kind of tried to replicate some things that other people were
Sure.
doing just to teach myself options. And for me, what I found with some of the styling was that I just didn't really enjoy like the actual styling of props and such and napkins and extra ingredients. Like that part just never, I don't know, it
Yes.
creatively never really inspired me, but I really like styling the food itself. And I also, on like, I don't know why. I think I just have a really fickle sense of style. And I feel like I would always look back like 6 months and be like, oh, I don't like that now. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that. And so I decided to kind of be real with myself. I'm like, all right, what's a style that you can do and keep doing for years and years and years that you won't get sick of if you look back on it? And so, long story short, I've kind of settled on this kind of white on white, backlit, ultra minimalist close up style that for me just works. And it feels kind of, yeah, I really love light in life.
Yes.
I like
Like,
things being bright.
yes.
Yeah. So I like the idea that, most of my shots are really bright. But that
Yeah.
said, I mean, I've also kind of boxed myself in, and some days I'm like, oh my gosh,
I want to
this
do
recipe
dark.
does not look good on white. What am I
Or
doing?
what about when you see somebody that has this glorious dark background and some of those photos are just
Oh,
gorgeous that you ever
I
think, oh, I want to
love
do
them.
that.
Totally, totally. Well,
Yeah.
and like one weird thing, like I don't know why cast iron, like black cast iron pans don't look
Yeah.
that great on a white background, or I don't know,
Oh,
they look
yes.
the contrast is too stark, and so every now and then I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, like what? How did I get myself into this hole? So if anybody has like epic tips on how to photograph black cast iron on white and make it not look weird, I'll take
Make it
them.
look like a domino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I just need to get. Actually, now that we're saying that, I think they make white cast iron pans now. I don't know.
Ah,
I've
there
never
you
thought of that.
go.
I might have just solved my problem.
Like enamel coated, is that what you think?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Why have I never
Hey.
thought of that? I will be looking into that.
Well, I'm
But
glad I could be of service. Although I don't
I
know
can
that I
think
did
that
them.
way.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's good to know because, I think it's easy to look at somebody else's style and not realize that they can feel hemmed in by that or, that's
Yeah.
it's so important to think about all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, and I love seeing it too when bloggers change it up. Like somebody who's kind
Yeah.
of had a certain style for a while. I just love watching everyone kind of go through their own
Yes.
progression and finding what it is they like and also being okay with like totally switching it up. I think that's one interesting thing about blogging. Like this is such a young thing and so many of us have only been, seriously doing it for maybe 5 years or something. And
Yes.
I'm so curious to see how people are going to change, how their styles are going to change, what they, focus on 5, 10, 20 years from now. And like, I hope it's not all the same stuff. I hope that people, keep evolving and, even somebody whose photography style or writing style may have been consistent for a while, I hope people keep taking risks and trying all the new things and seeing where it goes. And that we as an industry can like keep
Yes.
supporting people as they
I
do
love
that.
that. I do feel like for me, like if I'm branching out in new areas, for example, we're starting to add more video, then it's helpful for me to have some things feel kind of systematized, I guess is the way, so that I can kind of simplify. Simplify is a better way of saying that. And
Yeah.
so if you can simplify some areas, and that may mean kind of doing the same things similarly over a period of time, and then I'm learning this new skill in a different area, it seems to work that way, for me at
Yeah.
least.
What are some of the things that you've simplified?
Well, we've just got, I mean, maybe it's about the writing. I'm not always so convinced that I think people read posts anyway.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, what I've done is I've created certain segments of content. Like I love to encourage people to change up the recipe. And
Hmm.
so I've created a segment where I will actually say, here's some tips for how you should change up the recipe and make it your own. And here's some ideas of how you can do that. So that's something like a system I've created on most of my blog posts, which I love.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I just think, like I say, I wonder how much, I'm not saying I don't put any effort into the writing. Of course I do, but I feel like at the same time, if I'm really more focused on, the creating exciting video or some things like that, then the writing for me seems like it's falling into a simplified system for me. And I don't know, for now it's working, but we'll see.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I say, yeah, if that's not the thing that's creatively, energizing you right now, and video is, like, I feel like our readers can always sense the things that
Yes.
kind of feel like work or the things that, we're not as excited about at that time. So,
Oh, that is
yeah.
huge. Don't you think that's amazing about humans is that we can sense when someone's not being genuine.
Oh, yeah. And our readers are smart. Like
Yes.
they get it. But
Right.
at the same time, there's also, grace all around for that. And I think, yeah, some people love the writing. I definitely still get the comments like once or twice a month where somebody's shaking their fist and they're like, why do you write so much? Like, too much words, too many words. Just get to the
Really?
recipe. Oh, yeah. Or the post,
Wow.
where you like pour out your heart about something and then
Oh,
everybody's like, looks delicious. And you're like, hey,
that's all you have to say after all of that?
I feel like you didn't read. But
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That happens a lot. Yes.
yeah. But you know what? That's cool. Like if they want to come for the recipe, power to
That's
them.
exactly right. Yeah. So, is
Yeah.
there anything else you want to leave people with, based off the talk that you gave at Chopped and based off of these three statements that I just absolutely love?
Oh man. I would just say like, just trust that on any given day, wherever it is that people are at, like if you are in a season where, you're feeling burnout and, like things are taking a lot of extra energy right now and you're not as inspired and such, like take heart. It will totally get better eventually and you're not alone. And I don't know. I One of my old pastors always used to have this saying. He used to say that the worst thing is never the last thing.
Ah,
And I remember that, on the days or the seasons where things are hard and I'm like, this is not going to get better. I should just throw in the towel. like everybody's running ahead of me, like I'm
Go get a real
behind.
job. It's time. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And, and I have those times for sure where I'm like, I don't think this is the right thing for now. Like for people who find themselves in that spot today, I say, take heart. And if you love this, stick with it, and things will get brighter and better again. And, I just really believe that, yeah, like if this is something you love, keep at it. And remember that you're not alone. Remember that this is something that, everybody in our industry goes through. I've yet to meet a blogger who has not like really struggled with things at one point or another. And on the flip side, if you're in a season today where things are great and you're on fire and you're feeling confident and full of ideas, like, oh my gosh, soak it up. And
Yeah.
then much more, let it spill over. Like, I
Yes.
just firmly believe that, when we experience good seasons in life, those are meant to be shared. And so if this is one of those seasons for you and you feel like you have extra to give, like take 5 minutes at the beginning of the day or more and, let it spill over. Send some encouraging comments or texts or whatever it may be, or share some resources that you have, or just do whatever you can to encourage those and, like, ask the good questions of the people around you. Find out how they're really doing. And chances are someone's having a better or a worse day than you might think they are. So yeah, I guess as a parting thought, I'm rambling, but I would just say we're in this together. Like blogging feels like such a solitary endeavor at times, but this is a huge we sort of thing. And I think our industry will rise and fall based on, how much we really support one another. So
I love that, Allie.
yeah,
It's like that saying, the rising tide lifts all ships. So let's be a part of the
yes,
rising tide, right?
exactly, exactly. And it's win-win.
Yes, we have so much to gain from helping each other. It just makes me so excited to think about that.
Yeah, well, and it just feels like such a privilege that we are the pioneers for this industry, like us
Yeah.
today in 2017. Like we are the ones, you know, setting the future for what the
Right.
next like 5, 10, 20 years of this is going to look like. And so none of us have it figured out. We're all totally shooting at the hip. So, give each other grace, give ourselves grace, and we'll keep figuring it out together.
And so, food blogging is like, I love to say this, is like create your own adventure. So, don't no judgment of other people and their adventure. Create your own. I love
Yeah.
it.
Oh my gosh, exactly. And that'll make this whole thing so much fuller and richer and more beautiful.
I love it. Okay. I love to ask some fun questions at the end of our discussion. And so since you've been on the
Nice.
show before, I had to kind of get a little creative and think of some different questions to ask you.
Ooh, nice.
They're kind of similar, but kind of different. Okay. If you were on a deserted island and the island had only one food source available, what would you want it to be?
Egg drop soup.
You said that last time. I remember
Did
that.
I?
Yes, you did.
It's my favorite
Wrong
food.
answer.
All right, let's hear it. If not my magical egg drop soup, oh my gosh. Can I just say Mexican food in general?
Yes, you could say Mexican food in general. Because if
Chips
it's
and
Mexican
salsa.
food, you're happy.
Yeah, chips and salsa are my happy place.
Chips and salsa. Oh my God. If they serve that at a restaurant, then I don't even have dinner. I don't have room for it.
Oh my gosh. So we're planning a wedding right now. And
Oh, so
I told
exciting.
Barkley, I was like, all I care about is chips and salsa. Like the dress, the decor, I don't really care. I just want some chips and salsa. And to marry you and chips and
Oh,
salsa.
that could be like a country music song, don't you think?
Right.
We should clarify that Barkley's a musician, so maybe he could write you a song about that. Oh,
Ooh.
you're a musician too.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Is that how
We'll
you
have to
two
come up
met?
with our ode to chips and salsa. No, we met through friends, the old fashioned way,
Oh,
which is kind of fun.
nice. Yes. And he was
Yeah.
at Chopped. I got to meet him there, and it's wonderful seeing you
Yeah.
too. I'm really happy for you.
Oh, thank you.
Speaking of music, okay, here's my second question. If you could pick only one band or musician to listen to, who would that be?
Oof.
I know.
Well, this makes me very sad because they recently broke up, but I love the Civil Wars. I don't know if you've
Really?
listened to them. They're kind of an Americana duo. Oh my gosh, I love their music so much, but I think it will all be, yeah, I think there will be no more new Civil War songs. But
It
yeah,
seems a
I love
little
them.
appropriate that a group named Civil Wars would break up, but
I know. Ironic.
ironic, yes.
Yeah.
So you love them, huh?
Yeah, I love them.
I'm going to have to check them out because I don't think I've heard any of their music. It may be probably one of those things that when I hear them, I'll go, oh, yeah, I know who they are.
Yeah, I bet you will. I will say, I think I love, well, I love voices in general, but I feel
Yeah.
like the girl in the duo, Joy Williams, just has like one of the most expressive voices I've ever heard.
I love expressive voices.
Yeah, I think you'll love them.
Have you heard of the Tiny Office performances? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, is that PBS?
I think it's NPR.
NPR,
Well, or
yeah.
actually, I don't know.
Yeah, one of those, yeah. I
Yeah.
heard a group called, I think they're called Joseph. Have you heard of them?
Huh.
Oh, they're like that very expressive singing, just a guitar and I think they're three sisters. So the harmonies are pretty
Okay.
amazing. Yeah, I love that.
Nice.
Okay, my last question. Okay, do you have time to read at all? And usually I'm asking about TV, but I thought, why don't I ask about books? Because books are great too. So
Ooh.
do you have time to read? And if you do you have a favorite book do you want to share?
Oh my gosh. Yes, well, when I very first started blogging and was working way too much, reading was kind of my one hobby that somehow I kind of let fall by the wayside. And I realized it made me so unhappy not to be reading, not to have time. I love like falling asleep with a good book. I will give you two books to answer that question. The one that I'm finishing right now, I would actually specifically recommend to bloggers. It's called Chasing Slow, and it's written by Erin Lochner, who is from the site Design for Mankind. She's also a blogger. And that book totally relates to this whole conversation. It's all about kind of resisting the more pressure that often comes with blogging or just with life in general. It definitely applies to anyone, and choosing, or as she says, chasing slow, like being able to make some really intentional decisions about shaping your life and, how you assess everything. Yeah, it's totally in line with everything we're
Sounds
talking about.
wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. And especially for bloggers, like she's a blogger and she talks about, everything from sponsored posts to, terrible things that people say about you on the internet. So I think it's something bloggers can definitely like specifically relate to.
Absolutely.
But I would say my favorite book of all time that I love recommending to people is a book called Gilead. It's by an author. Her name is Marilyn Robinson. And it's fiction, but it won I can't remember, I think it was the Pulitzer a while back. Anyway, it's just a beautiful book. Our book club read it, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it's all about a retired minister who's originally from Kansas, which is near and dear to my heart, being from Kansas.
Yeah.
And it's all about, he ended up having a son, a very young son, much later in life. And so the whole book is kind of his journal / letter to his son about everything that he's learned in life. And I don't know, I just feel like it's one of the most profound, lovely things I've ever read. And I love Marilyn Robinson's writing. I just think her prose is beautiful. So yeah,
Oh, I can't wait
Gilead.
to check them both out then. That sounds like great book.
Yeah, yeah, I totally recommend them both.
I'm actually in a book reading club too, so maybe I'll bake two loaves in one hot oven because I could recommend that they read read one of those books
Yes,
as well, and that way I can
do it.
be prepared for my next book reading club. I love it. That's so good.
That's awesome.
So, Allie, how can people find you online?
Yep, I'm at Gimme Some Oven, Gimme, gimmesomeoven.com for the website, and on Twitter, Facebook, all of the above, Pinterest, Instagram.
I love it. Allie, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. I had a wonderful time.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Marley. You're such a light to all of us in this little blogging world and so far beyond the blogging world as well, obviously.
Thanks to Allie Ebright for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to go to choppedpodcast.com to learn more about today's show. And while you're there, why not sign up for the Chopped newsletter so you can be the first to know the exciting things coming up. Hey, thanks so much for your emails and your social media shares all about the podcast. It really means so much hearing from you. And also, thank you for your reviews of the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. Those kinds of things really help the show to get discovered by more people, and I greatly appreciate it. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.